September 10th, Hendrick Hudson School Board meeting. If you could all please rise so we can pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're currently in session.
I'm squeaking and making noises over here.
First order of business.
Making lovely noises.
Getting our agenda in order. Any items, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented? All those in favor, a second? Second. All those in favor? I want to pull fiscal 3.2, the resolutions, the Joseph Hogrider, Enrique Catalan, and Anthony Merlini resolutions were to table for additional research. There's some questions that will require a couple extra days, so we will be voting on that at the next board meeting. Are there any other items anybody would like pulled?
Yes, I'd like to pull consent item 3.1 general, the AIM resolution.
Okay. Any others?
I want to pull the,
God bless you.
Terrible
Okay.
television.
And that would be the interim healthcare?
yes.
Okay. So, having pulled those three items, or five, depending on how you count, can I get a motion to approve the items that were not pulled?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
The first one was the AIM resolution.
I just wanted to pull that resolution to make a special note that we are very concerned with the safety of our students with regards to the Algonquin project, and a resolution that will be presented at the September 15th meeting.
Oh,
For 15.
For meeting, sorry.
And also, the Buchanan for Plank Elementary School, their PTA is aiming to host a parent information night on the 23rd of September, which would include some panelists, which I think will include myself and members of the Town of Cortland Board, the Village Board from for Buchanan, and some other key people. So they'd like to videotape it, so those that can't attend can be emailed as a link or put on YouTube. So there's a lot of urgency, a lot of concern, and hopefully the board will pass the resolution tonight so we can officially give our position to FERC on Monday.
No, thank you for pulling that, Carol. I think we have to let our community know the board doesn't usually take positions on political issues, but in this case, this is a direct, has a direct impact of safety potentially on our students. And from what we have read about this, we have so many risk factors in this district with Indian Point, and we don't need another significant risk factor for our children, which is something we're very concerned about. So this board is taking, we don't usually take political positions on these issues, but this is something with a direct impact on students, so we do think it's important.
Could I just ask about your timetable again? I'm sorry.
We're going to have.
We will be having audience comments in about 5 minutes, and I can see you're prepared.
Thank you.
So we assure you that we take this very seriously as trustees of the district.
Actually, do we need to have a sentence or two in there? Because I'm not quite clear. Part of it's going to be new construction, and part of it's going to be laying pipe or pipeline above the pre-existing. And there's a significant difference in the way the construction would go in that if it's new pipeline going through rock and granite, I don't know exactly how they would do it, if they would have to blast and all those kind of things, and that would be close to BV. And so I don't know if we addressed that within our resolution, in fact, the type of construction and the dangers inherent in that. So we would, I think we need to kind of look at that a little bit. Because that's a little, because the way our resolution reads, it's about an existing pipeline, but some of it is new. And new construction to get down into the rock is a difficult task. So
about what that construction would be. But I
Yeah.
think for purposes of the resolution and to get it in the hands of FERC on Monday.
Well, you know, that may be something you
Yeah.
could address FERC on, like what the dangers of the construction
Sure.
would be and to the children, to the schools, and to the, other people can comment on the dangers to the power lines and stuff. Any construction.
Could we just, I'm sorry, could we
We
just
oppose
read?
any construction, but
What
if
do you
it's
want, Mary?
approved, what kind of construction will it, and what dangers will it, I think I need to cover that.
Could we just read the last, Rosanna, if you don't mind scrolling down to the last paragraph, what we're resolving, we sent to that federal, a copy
Do you
of the
want me to read it?
resolution. Yeah, if you don't mind. just-
Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be sent to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the New York State DEC, and all involved agencies with the request that the health, safety, and planning concerns addressed herein and previously raised in the record by the town be reviewed and considered before any further action is taken. By order of the Hendrick Hudson School District, Roseanne Scalanti District Clerk.
Okay, so we're
I think that
voicing
sums it
our
up.
concerns, yes.
Can I get a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
For delivery? Thank you. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Charles, you had a question regarding the interim health contract?
Yes, I'm doing this off memory, but Enrique, does that, does the contract that we're signing, require fingerprinting and background checks on the interim health that the company provides us? As we have to do for all of our employees, we have to fingerprint and background check all of our employees. Does this contract require it? I know in one part of it, it talks about, you know, you have to meet all governmental blah, blah, blah. But I just want to make sure that these employees are covered the same way as an employee that we hire in terms of background checks.
In terms of background checks, definitely. They work for other school districts, and all the ones that will come here will have background checks.
It does say, service provider represents that all individuals possess documentation evidencing such license qualifications, you know, local statutes, rules, and rights. I mean, that's licenses, but I would imagine that
Licensure is one thing.
correct, but I'm saying there's a response, the applicable
Yes.
state statutes and ordinances for protocols and
That's the
requirements is
supplement.
established by and to the school district, number 6.
I know, it's just one of those things that I just want to make
You
sure
like
that
to
we've
see
got
it,
that,
for
we've
sure.
got coverage on that, because that's important.
Most licenses today, even if you decide you want to be a coach or a referee, you have to be fingerprinted. So that's
I think
just.
anytime you're
That's
involved.
Anytime you work with children.
Absolutely, anytime you're working with children.
I
you have
know
to be
every
fingerprinted.
volunteers, the Little League. My son works with cerebral palsy this summer, and I know in Spark, and they fingerprinted it.
Hmm.
So I would imagine that this is, you know,
Part of the protocols now.
Just wanted to
you're
make sure.
comfortable that it's part of the contract. So can I get a motion to approve the interim healthcare contract as presented? Second? Those in favor? Okay. As I said, the other items will be tabled until the next meeting. And that brings us to items removed from the consent agenda, and that would be an acceptance of a donation from New York Life, and an employee, it's a combination totaling $650. I have to tell you, New York Life has been very good to Furnace Woods.
Over and over.
Over and over. And again, I thank the parents or the individual who made the donation and made the effort to get this matching donation from New York Life for Furnace Woods. So if I can get a motion to approve the donation to Furnace Woods Elementary,
So moved.
all those in favor?
Aye.
And that brings us to audience comments. There you go. If you please come up and give me your name and address.
Sure.
and-
Hi, my name's Jean Walsh, and my daughter is attending Henhot High School. I didn't plan on addressing because I was at my daughter's field hockey game and I just kind of ran in here. However, you were discussing looking at how the different types of work they would do to implement the new pipeline may occur. And there is someone who might be a good reference for you. He is on the task force, the Cortland task force that Linda Puglisi had organized. His name is Bernie Bahi, I think that's how you say his last name. He would be the person that you could contact to get additional information, because he worked for the DOT for many years, laying down a lot of the roads around here. So he would be the one who could really speak to how this new construction could impact the school. So he'd be the person that you could speak to regarding that. And
What was his name again?
I'm sorry?
What was his name again, Bernie?
Bernie Vahi, he's on the task force that Linda Puglisi set up through the town of Portland. So he's somebody you could discuss this with, and he'd give you all the answers.
I spell it. I have to check too.
I believe it's Vaughey.
Thank
First
you.
name Bernie. And then the other issue, you talked about the resolution and who you were sending it out to. I was wondering if you would also consider forwarding it to some of our legislators, the state and the state legislators, and also the senators too. It would be very helpful if you could forward that to them so that they are aware of the concerns.
Yeah, and also, we are preparing a press release which will go out tomorrow morning, as well as a letter to the community, an email blast to the community speaking to the board's approval of this resolution and highlighting certain pieces of
And
it.
just one other comment. Personally, this is not a political, none of us see it as political. We live in the high impact zone, which means that if there is an eruption, you'll be picking me up in a dust buster. It's the truth.
That's terrible.
We would be completely incinerated, so it's not political,
No, I know.
okay?
It's horrifying. Anybody else?
You have to show your poster. Someone has to show the poster.
I think they're coming. Or not.
Hello. I'm Karen Costa. I currently have children at FGL, but my third born will be going to BB next year. And honestly, I have to say, I'm not going to send him if this goes through. He could die by going to school from this pipeline. There's nothing in the resolution for air quality. You know, he's basically going to be in a construction zone. I believe it's going to start in March of this year. I think, is that right?
March 2015.
March of this year. How long will it take? 2 years? 2 to 3 years.
Projected completion date is October.
So you're going to
26th.
have, 5-year-olds to 10-year-olds living from 9 to 3, Monday through Friday, in a construction zone. So there's just so many issues. My husband's in construction. He has to get his lungs checked every year for just debris. That's what people who are in construction have to do. There's asthmatic kids who will be at risk. It's going to be a disaster. And like Jeannie said, if it blows, they're dead. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Erica Mills. My kids go currently are first and fourth grade at Frank G. Lindsay. While I don't have kids at BV, one thing that I really want, and I think you probably do already understand, is that the construction, the current pipeline that's in existence isn't really near BV. It's north of BV. They're putting it there. So political issue, not political issue, you're putting the children at risk that are there day in and day out. I almost feel like being up here is kind of a moot point, because I hope that you all agree with this, and it's not, not telling you anything you don't already know or agree with. But it is something that I've been talking to a lot of BB parents, because I know a lot of people in the community, and I don't know if they're as concerned as I am in a lot of ways, which makes me a little bit, so many different potential things could happen. And property values, a very big issue. The safety of our teachers, the safety of our children, it just runs the gamut. So I just wanted you to know that I'm personally against it, and I hope that, as a community, we can all come together and fight this and beat it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Sue McDonald. I am not a resident of the Henry Hudson District, but I'm a founding member of the AIM project. I asked... Safe, yes. Stop the Algonquin pipeline expansion. I asked earlier if you could repeat the timeline for me, what you're going to do with the resolution.
Yeah, so with the board approval tonight, a couple things. Tomorrow we're going to send out a press release to alert the media to the board's official position around health and safety concerns. We'll do an email blast to our entire community tomorrow as well, highlighting and articulating parts of the resolution. Next Monday, the 15th, FERC is having a open comments where our resolution will be accompanied with a letter to FERC and will be registered into the record at that meeting, as well as copies of the letter sent to FERC and the DEC, and as was recommended tonight, to other lawmakers.
Okay, thank you. I spoke with the people from FERC today about how they will go about assigning time for people to speak. It's likely to be a very short time, but they recommended that anybody who has comments bring a copy of their comments and any supporting material and hand that in as well. The question that, I'm sorry, I don't remember your names, this young lady raised about the construction debris in the air. There's also a problem with the emissions from the pipelines and from the compressor station across the river. I'm sorry, I don't keep the facts in my head quite as well, but there are chemicals that are in that pipeline that are called VOCs, volatile organic chemicals, and they're things like benzene and formaldehyde and some of the other cancer-causing materials. And those things will be in the air also, and something you really need to be very careful about with the students and with the teachers and with the people who live in the area. There are any number of issues around the pipeline, but for you, I understand that the closeness of the school to the pipeline itself is a really serious problem, and I think that's a very, very legitimate concern, and I hope you all show up at the meeting next Monday.
So you're
Thank you.
saying that the pipeline itself is the source of pollution?
Yes. Once it's active.
It vents.
If it's called a blowdown? That's come from the compressor stations.
And also the metering station.
And off of the metering stations as well. And you do have 2 metering stations in
There's
the area?
one right by the Albany Post, the diner on Albany Post Road. And apparently they do schedule, or sometimes they don't schedule, it's just needed, a blowdown. When they do that, they're venting the pipe, and this they will be doing more when they're removing one pipe and putting another pipe in. So when they're taking out the pipe, they will have to get rid of the gas that's in it. Now, these gases contain, as Sue said, different VOCs.
Could you come up?
Sorry.
We would like everybody on the television to be able to hear this also.
So when they're doing the blowdown, when they're venting the pipeline, which they will have to do in order to remove a pipe and put in a new one, they will be doing that sporadically. And I believe one of the resolutions passed in Peekskill was to request knowing when that was going to happen, which is of significance considering that students will be traveling by that in school buses. Okay, so if the school bus is idling and they're venting a pipe that has gas in it, and the gas is not scented because it's not entering homes at that point in time, there's quite a potential there. I spoke with someone from the chief of the Peekskill Fire Department, and I said, so what happens if someone's walking by as they're venting and they don't know they're venting and they light a cigarette? He just looked at me and said,
Yes.
okay. So I also asked them about their protocol in case there is an explosion, and they said that what they are going to do is shut off the valve, the gas valve, and then once all the gas is left, then they go in and try to retrieve or help individuals who are in harm's way. that they don't go in to fight the fire until the gas is shut off, which is understandable. But those blowdowns do contain those chemicals along with particulate matter. And particulate matter comes in two different forms, 2.5 and 10. And these types of particles get into your respiratory system, and they really lodge in the alveoli where gas exchange is occurring inside your lungs. So they can do a lot of long-term damage when exposed over a long period of time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your attention to this tonight. Really appreciate it. Your petition is, your resolution is good, but as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't go quite far enough. I think you need to add some of these safety concerns in there as well. However, I'm very glad that you are going to approve it and get it to FERC, because that's important that they understand that people are paying attention. Thank you.
You all see that?
I think, do you want me to bring it up?
Sorry, there's like cracks and cracks before, sorry.
Tell the camera. You might want to let the tele.
So the camera can
So the
see it.
camera can see it, yeah.
Vanna White. Definitely Vanna White.
Hi, I'm Luna Karen. I am a Hendrick Hudson School resident, although I don't have children. I have grave concerns about this AIM project. From the map, the yellow shaded portion is the blast radius. It's called a high consequence area. Anything in that yellow shaded area, 845 feet in any direction, will be vaporized in 90 seconds. Unsheltered individuals that are outside, including children on a playground, will be vaporized in the event of an explosion. Okay, did I get your attention?
We already have.
Okay. How can this be acceptable? We have to do everything, and we've been fighting for a while now, but we need everyone to really seriously express their concerns, either in a letter to FERC, which has to be submitted by September the 29th when the public period for comments closes. This is a bomb. I don't care what the technology is. All you need is one bad weld, and this thing can blow. It's going to take out 1,600 feet of Route 9 because the pipeline is going to go under 99A right at the Bypass Diner, right at the Westchester Diner. How do you think emergency help from other locations is going to get here? How are we going to transport survivors to the hospital? That's our major thoroughfare, isn't it? Think about it. What happens to the children stuck here in the school that are fortunate enough to survive? Your first responders aren't coming in until that gas company shuts that gas valve off. What do you think your survival rate of your children and your staff is going to be? I can't conceive of how you think that this is a political issue. This is an environmental issue, straightforward. We already have been we've been unjustly burdened with Indian Point. There's already 3 pipelines coming on shore at the foot of Indian Point that feed the 2 existing pipelines. This red line is the new pipeline that they want to put in, and they want expanded past 9A up presently to Yorktown, and that's the AIM project. Well, guess what? They're coming back from Yorktown further up the line with their Atlantic Bridge project. This whole area is going to, in the event of an explosion, this whole area is going to be devastated. We haven't even touched on Indian Point. Look how close that blast zone is to Indian Point. You are the caretakers of our children when they're in your custody. I cannot plead with you enough to do something about this and shut this down. You have to strongly object to this. This construction is going to go on 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, blasting through bedrock, backfilling trenches. It's not like, oh, here's a piece of pipeline. They're going to dig a huge trench and weld these pieces of 42-inch diameter pipe together, x-ray them and pop them in the ground and backfill them with cement and then dirt. These pipelines are only required to be buried 30 to 36 inches below the soil. Okay, Okay, you're shaking your head.
Because I've read this and I still can't believe it's actually happening.
It's
or
right.
even being attempted to happen.
Correct. This is a densely populated area. We already have an F in air quality in this area. We have one of the highest asthma rates in the country. Are you going to allow the children onto the playground at BV when this construction is going on? The event of a blowdown at Stony Point or at the metering station in Peekskill. What's going to happen during construction when some of these roads are closed that they have to dig up to pass this pipeline? What happens to your bus route? What happens to your evacuation plan for your children in the event of a non-pipeline emergency if some of these roads are shut due to construction? Have you guys thought about any of this? Any questions? I'm not done. I'm just warming up. All right, what am I up to? Have you considered your insurance premiums? Have you thought about that? What that's going to do to your insurance premiums? Now we're talking money, right? Where we live, where Jeannie and I live in Blaylock Park, we've been told our mortgage notes may be called in full and our homes may become uninsurable because we're too close to the pipeline. That's pretty frightening. What about the disruption of the children? I'm sorry? I'm getting it. Inspector's 10K report that's been filed with FERC. They themselves admit that they do not carry enough liability insurance. This project, this AIM project, is going to cost $1.3 billion. The city of Peekskill, in their resolution, called for an insurance, an A-rated admitted carrier in New York State to issue a policy for $1.3 billion. These are serious questions that you guys need to really be asking. What is this going to do to my insurance premiums? Who's going to cover the cost when your infrastructure is damaged anywhere near the school? When your roads are ripped up and your water mains are broken and school can't be in session if there's no water, am I correct? This is heavy, heavy equipment that they're going to be bringing in. Cranes. In some cases, if it's an inaccessible area, they will helicopter in pieces of the pipeline so that they can weld them if it's a really tough spot for them to get through. Am I getting through to you guys? I don't know, I'm getting a lot of blank stares.
I think you're preaching to the choir.
Correct.
Okay, well, again, we only have till September 29th. FERC just announced that December 19th, they're going to issue their final findings. The permits will be issued after that if it's a positive finding, and the draft environmental impact statement that was issued in August is woefully inadequate and does not address several concerns. But as usual, FERC's just going to rubber stamp it, and we're all going to have to live with the consequences of it. We have asked the city of Peekskill to file for intervenor status. The town of Portland has filed for intervenor status. We're all trying to fight, but we all have to unite in order to win that fight. Spread the word, Twitter, Facebook. We've already gotten 25,000 petitions that we're going to hand deliver to FERC on Monday night. Can we make it 100,000 by Monday? It's not impossible, is it? Can we get it to go viral? I hope so. Any questions?
Where's the gas going?
The gas is destined for points north of Boston. Supposedly, Spectra Energy, which is the parent company of Algonquin Gas, has 10 local suppliers that need the gas. The market is expected to increase 12% by 2018 or 2020. They're asking for a 38% increase with this 42-inch pipeline. Ultimately, the gas is going to be exported overseas. They've just gotten approval for 2 liquid natural gas terminals, one in St. John's and one in St. John's, New Brunswick, and one in Nova Scotia for export through the Canadian Maritime and the Northeast Pipeline. They're going to come back and they're going to want to expand this pipeline even further. We do not benefit from this gas. This is gas from the Marcellus Shale from fracking. It's full of radon. Radon's decay life is 3 to 4 days. The decay product, polonium-210 and lead-210, known carcinogens. Those half-lives are 3,000 to 4,000 years. That's what's sitting in the pipelines that exist and the new pipeline. if that pipeline ruptures, all of that debris is gonna become airborne. I don't know what else to say. I'm not trying to scare you guys, I don't sleep at night. Jeannie doesn't sleep at night. Please, spread the word, get some support. Talk to 5 people. There's how many of you here? If you talk to 5 people, and I talk to 5 people, think of the number of people we can all reach. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Can I just say one other thing? Rick Kubowitz, who is doing the risk assessment for the town of Portland, wrote a very good piece regarding the difference between a 42 and a 16 or 20-inch pipeline. In the end, he basically said that he has great respect for what a 42-inch pipeline can do. So when people will say, well, it's been here for 50, 60 years and there hasn't been any problems, true. However, look at the risk ratio and how much it's increasing. Significant. So this isn't really political at all. And I guess Una and I kind of take offense to it because we're going to be vaporized if everyone's wrong. You know, this is not political to us. This is, you know, my house was built in 1912. It's been in my husband's family for years. I have first dibs, okay? So my husband's family had this home before this pipeline ever came to be. And I really don't like to hear the political aspect because it certainly is not. Some may make it that way, but it really is not
It's
political at all.
absolutely, it's not political at all. It's, I mean, I think that goes without saying.
No, the only reason I had said it was political, this is a private company that wants to build this, and as a board, where we have an obligation for the students of this district, it's only political because we have to use the political process
I see.
to stop it. That's all I
I
meant.
see.
It's
I
more
see.
of we usually don't advocate for something unless it's directly school board business. And this is something we have to advocate to our legislators for, and we usually can't take position on that. We're not allowed to.
I
But
see.
this is something that's directly does impact us. We're all residents here. We all have children who go to the
Friends.
schools. So it's personal to us, but because we're using the political process, that's why that's the only reason it's political.
And unfortunately,
You know,
though, some lay people hear that and they think immediately that this is a political football issue and that we're tree huggers, you know, and we're anti-American.
No.
And what else have we been called? I mean, there's been a lot, you know, but we just don't want to be picked up by a dustbuster, you know, after this is all said and done.
Can you go back to the timeline? You said if this passes, construction will start next March.
March.
When will it be in operation?
Once the permits are issued, construction is due to start in March of 2015. They hope to complete this segment of the pipeline, which will run from Rockland to Stony Point to Stony Street in Yorktown by October of 2016. They hope to complete the Atlantic Bridge project by November of 2017.
They're pushing it through fast. Very fast.
So by November 2017, it would be in operation.
The AIM pipeline will be in operation by October of 2016, according to Spectra's timeline right now. Originally, FERC was going to give their final rulings in January of 2015. They've now released the December 19th, 2014 date for their final findings. So shortly after that, providing all of the permitting agencies are on board and issue the permits, then construction will begin in the spring. I also want to point out to you Spectra's safety record. Spectra, again, is the parent company of Algonquin Gas. Since 2006, they have had 21 very serious accidents, resulting in $8.5 million in damage to their own equipment. Spectra would rather pay regulatory fines. I think the last one they paid was $137,000 for noncompliance, than actually send out their men and maintain these pipelines. Spectra Energy is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. $137,000 isn't even their Kleenex budget for the year. It's cheaper for them to get fined than it is to actually make sure that we're safe. The San Bruno explosion in 2010 in California. 40 homes, 8 deaths. The place was leveled. It was a faulty weld. Guess what? The energy company knew it was faulty. They repaired part of it, they didn't finish repairing the rest of it. and people lost their lives in their homes. The gas industry is basically self-regulating. The natural gas industry is self-regulating, and that is part of the problem. And I don't think that we need to say this is a political issue or political process. It's a government process, because FERC is a government agency. So I don't think it's political. I think it's government. I don't see where the politics come into it.
Well, it's a broad term, it covers government, yeah.
But it's really a governmental process more than a political process.
When you advocate it, but any advocacy is, it's not.
Oh yeah, inspectors not promising to bring any jobs to our area. And permanent jobs. So why are we being burdened with this?
And we don't get any taxes on the gas that passes through.
So, okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time and for your passion. I appreciate your,
It's our work.
that's right. But thank you. Thank you for
The
taking the time.
pipeline is 202 feet from my bedroom window. That's why I'm passionate.
I understand it. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Yep, that brings us
Whoa. Wow.
sorry, there's one.
So I've given a lot of talks, speeches, and presentations, but never have I followed one that somber and sobering. So I echo the board's comments about thank you for your passion and commitment. We're there with you, and on behalf of the board, we certainly think our voices heard on this meeting. So you're more than welcome to stay and hear about instruction and teaching and learning. Because that's the next part of our conversation is a conversation and an update on how we as an administrative team are going to get our job done this year. After my update and the PowerPoint here, the board's going to deliberate a little bit about its goals for the school year. So I'm preceding that conversation regarding goals to anticipate and share with the board and the community how we get the work done. So in June of 2013, a month before I officially started, I sent a survey out. 300 plus residents, teachers, administrators commented and gave me input on what do you want your next superintendent to do, focus on, so on and so forth. And three significant themes came out from that feedback. One is to make sure you spend time learning and watching before you do something, sort of get a lay of the land before you act. Honor the past decisions and ask questions. Make sure you're learning and studying. And lastly, don't overreact or judge too quickly. So part of the process I spent last year was asking a lot of questions and to, as I would say, triangulate the data. Surveys, interviews, interviewed each board member individually, our administrative team last summer. Close to 200 separate people made their way through my office, and Roseanne can vouch for that because she set up the meetings, made the phone calls, and met everyone the same way I did. So my goal last year was to make sure I had enough information in front of me and that it was balanced to make sure that when we decided to take action or create a position that it was grounded in good information. This data included conversations around the Common Core Learning Standards. We had some transportation issues and issues around the Office of Pupil Personnel, which in both of those cases the board allowed us to go ahead and identify consultants to come in and advise us on how to strengthen our transportation department and how to strengthen our PPS department, which I'll talk a little bit about later. So what I learned, a couple themes in my first year is one is we need to make sure we celebrate successes. There's a lot of good news in this district. Kids are going fantastic places. They're engaged in great things in classrooms, on the stage, and on the ball field, so on and so forth. And we have to make sure that we are aggressively and overtly letting everyone know the good things that are happening in schools. Sadly, although not necessarily recently, the media likes to pick up on the issues, whether they're with particular schools or the profession. However, our high school received two very well-deserved accolades lately, most recently around graduation rate, AP exams, and sending kids to college. So good news is out there, and the feedback I heard was to make sure we celebrate those successes. I also heard that staff want to play a role in improvement, that they want to be part of the solution, they want to participate, they want to serve, whether it's on committees or in teams, or give guidance and feedback. Because we have over 280 teachers, and if we're pushing an aggressive instructional plan to meet the needs of the Common Core and to make sure kids are career and college ready, we have to make sure that we're engaging teachers and other staff members who see it and live it every day in the classroom and in our schools, to make sure that we're going in the right direction and we have some cyclical feedback. Also, two other things that accentuate the uniqueness, that our community is unique in that we're not anchored by a town or a village, unlike Chappaqua or Tarrytown or other districts in our region. This part of the county is identified by the school district as opposed to Main Street or so on and so forth. So that's a really unique piece that we have. Verplank, we have Montrose, we have all these little hamlets that comprise of our school district, and there's a lot of identity to the school district as opposed to those towns and villages, which make us unique in this area. And lastly, no more islands. What I mean by that is a lot of feedback was around bringing the district together, to making sure we had an instructional plan for all kids in all schools, and that it didn't matter what elementary school your students go to, they were going to have the same experiences and the same access to information. It would look different in the 3 elementary schools, as it should. Each school has its own DNA, but that we could guarantee that it doesn't matter where you live or what grade your child is in, they're going to have the same rigorous expectations and opportunities in all 3 of our elementary schools. So the board shortly will deliberate around 3 very simple and focused goals, making sure that we improve the career and college readiness of our students, which really is our academic goal, fiscal responsibility, to make sure we're fiscally responsible, and goal around communication and perception. So here is how we will address this as an administrative team. We're going to increase our communication as a team by expecting collaboration in the team approach. We need to make sure we bring key people to the table, at the table, to weigh in on decisions, to make sure that we have valuable input, to make sure everyone knows what role they play, that they can weigh in on decisions, and that they're responsible for implementing those decisions in their schools or their programs. The key here is we have to have a laser-like focus on instruction. We have to talk about student learning. We've begun that in terms of our dialogue with our administrative teams. We're going to continue those discussions. Alice met as recently as yesterday with the grade level leaders at the elementary level. The middle school and high school are meeting with their team leaders and department chairs, that we have to make sure we have a laser-like focus on how we are teaching students. With the Common Core learning standards, particularly with math, it wasn't necessarily about what we were or how we were teaching, it was about what we were teaching. The standards changed. Kids are reading more complex texts, they're reading more nonfiction. In math, we heard a lot about math last year and addressed that with some very poignant and relevant staff development as well as parent nights. We have to now get back to how we're teaching kids. The state has weighed in on what the standards are and what to teach, and we have to make sure that we are equally as focused on how we deliver instruction as we are focused or have been focused on what that instruction will be. Lastly, as I end my first year and celebrate my little past 14th month, we know that the honeymoon is over. I've looked, I've listened, I've talked, I've studied, and now it's time to get to work. So I'm sharing with you a picture we drew to identify sort of what the vision is of how we're going to work with our staff to make sure that our board goals are not only implemented, but implemented with fidelity and implemented with a lot of cyclical feedback. So your handout is a very authentic sketch of a series of discussions that I had with Alice over the summer, that we had with our technology director, with our PPS director, to sort of take all of the data I learned in my first year, crosswalk that with the Common Core Learning Standards, and how we are going to make sure we focus on instruction in our district. So I'm going to break down this chart, and I was contemplating taking this graphic and making it very technologically savvy, but I think there's something authentic about this, because this is the sketch we drew, and we took a picture of it, so you're seeing it in its most authentic form. So we're going to have an instructional team. Our instructional team, their responsibility is to make sure that the vision and the purpose of the board goals are adhered to make sure that they're relevant, and to make sure that we're implementing our plan. The instruction team is really looking at our educational process at the 30,000-foot level, looking at things K to 12, whether it's across technology, whether it's through the eyes of special education or student support services. And their job is to brainstorm the non-negotiables and must-haves. And what I mean by that is, what will the work be? The board sets what we want to achieve in terms of our goals, and this team is going to weigh in on how we're going to achieve it with our administrative staff, our teacher leaders, and ultimately all the way down to the school level. This group includes myself, Alice that I mentioned, our assistant superintendent for business, as well as our instructional technology director and pupil personnel director. These are folks that see and supervise programs across all schools and across all departments. This team meets every Monday morning. We have a shared agenda in a very transparent way to make sure that we're on task and we know what we're working on and how we're going to work on it. We started this process on Monday, earlier this week. An implementation team. An implementation team is what I think in the past we called our administrative cabinet. The implementation team, their job is to identify what and how we're going to implement change. This is a group that does research and development. Earlier this week when we met on Monday, we did an article review, which actually is about the first chapter of a book called Focus, which is a meta-analysis of how to enact school change and make it meaningful. I shared that with the board. And we talked about doing a few things very, very well in order to engineer easy wins and to demonstrate what success looks like. This team talks about staff development, talks about instructional strategies, how we're going to measure success, how we're going to collect data through walkthroughs, and essentially what are our actions going to be to support the board goals to make sure that work happens. That includes myself, it includes Alice that I mentioned, our directors, and all of our school-based administrators, including principals and assistant principals. This group meets the second Monday of the month, and we kicked that team off earlier this week. We then break our team into an elementary and a secondary team. This is where the group of administrators by level, K through 5 and also 6 through 12, come together to talk about what the impact of the work means in their program-specific schools. How do we make walkthroughs a practice in K through 5? How do we share data? What are we looking for in our classrooms? Or in terms of instructional technology, what are best practices for 4th graders and 5th graders that are probably different than best practices for teachers who teach in our STEM programs or at the high school level? So these teams, by their function and their title in our district, look at what does this work mean for our schools? What does it mean in our high school to make sure that we're talking about STEM-related approaches? What does it mean in our middle school when we want to collect evidence of student achievement or high levels of student engagement? This team will meet the 4th Monday of the month, opposite the implementation team, to look at what research tells us about best practice, what research tells us about instruction, and how they will make it alive and very alive and well in their schools. Now, in addition to just administrators weighing in on these changes and giving us input, we have a team of teachers that serve in a teacher leadership capacity.
And what research tells us about driving school change and changing instruction is you have to engage teachers at a meaningful level so they can be part of the change process. We have department chairs, we have grade level leaders, we have math coaches, we have team leaders at our middle school. These folks need to play a very specific role in helping us achieve our goals. They need to be at the table, they need to be able to weigh in on what the temperature is of whether it's the grade level or the school. They need to advise us on what the dialogue and the conversations are when they meet with their grade levels or their teams. So we have an awareness that the direction in which we're going or what we're proposing is going to bring meaningful change. What this creates is a set of checks and balances between our implementation team, our administrators, and what and how we're going to implement change in the elementary and the secondary level. So by creating these systems of checks and balances and frequent and regular communication, there's a sense of reliability and there's a sense of trust that when we make organizational decisions, we can talk about what implementation looks like. And that the same people weighing in on decisions in the implementation team are also the ones who are talking about what it will look like. I think this level of accountability, not trouble accountability, but trust accountability is really important if we're going to make changes in moving the needle in terms of student achievement. But ultimately, and what research certainly tells us about driving school change is in order to have routine use in classrooms, we need to engage folks in each of our schools. We need to engage not just department chair or team leaders. We need to make sure that each of our 5 schools has a functioning team of educators that can make school-based decisions about how to implement things. I'll use the 3 elementary schools as an example. They are very different demographically. They are very different in terms of some of the services they provide to different students. Each school has its own DNA. However, understanding each school has its own DNA, we need to make sure that every 5th grader is reading and writing at or above grade level. We need to make sure we have data systems K through 5, so when students aren't reading, we know where they're struggling and we can prescribe some interventions for them. That all 3 elementary schools are using the same data, they're using it in the same way, they're using the same assessments. So we have dipstick measurements where Alice or myself or the principals can say, on October 1st, 2014, we want to know how many of our 3rd graders are reading at grade level. And we want to know why students aren't reading at grade level. And we want to bring those teachers together to talk about how we will make sure those students read at grade level. Those conversations are perhaps the most important and most meaningful at the school level. There, at the school level, is where the change really happens. That's how you impact routine use in classrooms. That's a little bit different for us, is focusing on school-based teams, and we're going to spend a lot of time around this as implementation team or administrators focusing on this next week. The goal of school-based teams comes from the research from Rick Dufour about 15 years ago around professional learning communities. Professional learning communities is a fancy educational buzzword for a group of people at a school-based level making school-based decisions based on their DNA, their kids, their climate, and their culture. So the idea is that these folks at the school level, led by their principal or administrator, will make decisions on what will the change look like in our school based on some of the other factors that make their schools unique. These teams include the principal and assistant principal, other key staff, whether it's math coaches, department chairs, grade level leaders, so on and so forth. The idea is that each school has its own DNA, but each school does not have its own destination. So this creates a set of ownership and creates some urgency in each of our schools to say our concerns are their concerns. We've talked at the board table in my past 14 months about making sure kids are career and college ready. What a great conversation for our 5 schools to discuss what college and career ready looks like at the middle school, the high school, BB, so on and so forth. These teams create a protocol and create an opportunity for those discussions to take place to make sure that we loop all the way around from routine use in the classroom to what our goals are and what our expectations are from the community to us and from us to our staff. And lastly, our individual meetings. These are my opportunities to make sure I'm very connected to the work as the superintendent, and meeting with our administrators and our principals and our other staff is an opportunity weekly to get the temperature, to understand what some of the personnel issues or the highlights or concerns are, to have a conversation around what's getting in the way of implementing change or what are the successes, to talk about student issues, but also to make sure that I'm fully engaged with those administrators, walking the buildings, getting in the classrooms, and not just hearing about what's going on in the school, but physically seeing and seeing evidence of it, to make sure that the decisions and the issues we talk about here are being implemented in the classroom. So to make this happen, we have talked as an administrative team about what a team is, what it looks like. We spent a lot of time at our retreat talking about this. We spent a little bit of time on Monday as an implementation team talking about this, and it's an ongoing project to make sure that all of us, even if I'm the high school principal and I'm chiefly responsible for 9th grade to 12th grade, that I'm intimately aware and involved with what's going on with kids coming into my building. What are the reading protocols? What are the assessments? What does math support or math intervention look like for middle schoolers so we can prepare everybody? It's about focus and prioritizing. We talked about focus a little bit earlier. Protocols for meetings, making sure that there's a level of transparency so everyone in the organization knows what we're talking about. There are no secrets here. There's nothing to hide, which is a really big issue to move forward. So moving forward, we have some key dates here. On September 16th, the elementary principals and their teacher leaders, this is a group of about 30 teachers from BV, Frank G, and Furnace Woods are going to come together. And we're going to look at the work that was accomplished last year, and we're going to identify a set of priorities for this year in order to help us move forward to accomplish our goal around career and college readiness. This work will also include our implementation team to review our current strategic plan, to identify what strategies and action plans currently exist in our strategic plan that will help us get there, to make sure that we're using the good work from the prior strategic plan committees and revisiting that work to help us get the job done. On September 17th, we're going to discuss what a professional learning community looks like in our schools. We're going to review some research and some best practice around how to engage teachers at the decision-making level to implement change. That will happen on the 17th, and it's my hope that by November, I'm bringing back to you, the board, our education plan, how we're going to make college and career ready happen in our elementary, middle schools, and high schools. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about college and career ready in terms of a board goal, but we have a pretty good head start. The strategic plan that many of you worked on and our staff worked on speaks volumes to how we prepare kids for an ever-changing world, whether it's elementary, middle school, or high school. But what this will do is this will tie everything together. It will give us an opportunity for us to present how things will be different in our schools to make sure we achieve those goals. I have one more slide, but I'll leave that for later. So that was a lot of information to digest, but this wasn't, this was the result of a lot of conversations, a lot of data, a lot of good work that our staff has done, and a lot of opportunities to learn what worked and how to maintain some of the good things that have happened in the district, but also know that we've got to turn a corner and make sure that we're engaging people at the local level, meaning the schools, to make sure this work happens. So I'll take a breath and I'll let anyone ask questions.
Are we going to continue to have map nights for parents this year?
Yeah, those are, I think the first one
The
is
first one is scheduled for, it's the Thursday, I believe it's October 9th. It's
Thank
the
you again,
Thursday that
ladies.
week.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
What was your date?
It's the Thursday, I believe it's October 9th. It will be at BV.
Noticed all over.
Of course, and it will, the first one will be at BV this year. Last year, the third one was at BV. But it's for everyone, it's for all families from the whole district.
So those will continue because everyone moved up a grade and we have families who send students to kindergarten.
And I think it's very important, because it seemed to dispel a lot of anxiety that parents had once they were informed on, some of the instructional practices.
It says the 16th on the calendar? Okay.
Elementary math night.
Thank you.
7 to 8:30,
Carson's the
PNPD.
detail guy.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm not sure that's correct. We'll check it. We'll check it. The calendar's just a piece of paper.
That's good.
Thank you.
And the
Well, in any
feedback-
case, it will be noticed,
Yeah.
and it will
Yeah.
be, I'm sure there'll be connect-eds and
Oh,
all sorts of
absolutely.
things.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the feedback from Math Night, Barbara, is really what prompted us to work with Wheelabrator at our last meeting. The board approved a donation from Wheelabrator. The feedback from Math Night was ecstatic. Give us more, do it in ELA. The more we can engage parents, and what we're going to use the Wheelabrator grant for is for teachers using the whiteboard or other pieces of technology to demonstrate certain concepts of vocabulary and push out on our YouTube page a series of tutorials to parents, teaching parents how to help their children. So even if they can't come to Math Night, we're going to flood them with how to help.
It's I think, extremely important because, one of the main things that we heard time after time was, I don't know how to help my child, it's not like when I went to school. So I think the more help that we could provide to parents, in turn, it's more help that they can provide to their own children. So thank you.
Just a small question. Actually, 2 questions. What happens on the third Monday? You don't have the third Monday covered. But on the elementary and secondary teams, you have the superintendent and the assistant superintendent, the principals, assistant principals. It seems like in this elementary and secondary team would be a good time to have a director, because that's where the ICT teachers come into play, and so it would be a good place for them to be the director of PPS.
Yeah, and they will attend. What will happen when we get this running is usually the idea is that the agenda for the elementary and secondary team meetings are set at the end of the implementation team meeting. So when we have all of our administrators together, we'll commit to what each group needs to work on, and then certainly they'll attend ad hoc. Absolutely.
Because I just, the more, because we have sort of a matrix structure. The special ed teachers work under both the director and the principal in the building, and that communication. I think our consultant said there's nothing wrong with the matrix as long as everybody's talking.
Yep.
Communicating about what to do. So getting there together.
I think you'd be impressed at how much more time is spent even in buildings with special ed teachers and the regular ed teachers and, music, art, whatever, all joining in and actually having these meetings about students, which I think is so much more even important than having, directors talk, because your basic goal is to have the best for those kids, and I think that has to happen, basically at the school level itself. So I think that can benefit even more, and I think that's what we have to make sure is happening.
Well, we have grade level teachers. We have all these grade level and department chairs. Do the special education, do they have grade level?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And what they do, the special education department, the other Mondays that you asked about, the first Monday is building level faculty meeting, and the third Monday is department or grade level meeting. So every Monday's taken, unless you have a month like October that has a 5th Monday, and that's just a bonus.
But also,
But
it's a
special
visual
ed
meeting.
Everything's on Mondays. We do
Exactly, but the
Special ed
special
teachers
eds
still
meet,
rotating,
one
right?
month they meet together as a special ed department, and the next month they go to the grade level they're working the most with.
Well, but this isn't finite anyway. I mean, this is sort of going to, as people are needed or as topics are discussed, I mean, this is something this is a structure. I mean, it's not just the final.
Right. So for example, on our agenda, and I'm going to ruin the surprise from the future presentation, but on our agenda for our elementary and secondary meeting, Annie Chestnut, our communication specialist, is going to come and give the elementary principals a 10-minute overview of best practices in communication for elementary principals from some of her research and conferences she's gone to. And then to the high school, give them a similar presentation, but more directed toward middle school and high school kids, particularly as those students are more engaged in Twitter and Facebook and all those sort of things. So depending on the topic, we'll have different people weighing in on different agenda items.
And there are teacher leaders for our specials too, for the arts.
Oh, of course.
PE and ELL, all those.
Mhm.
Look at her. Yeah.
The nice thing particularly, I'll say with the secondary team, is we're going to have a venue to have 6 through 8 conversations, whether it's around curriculum, instruction, graduation requirements. We've had a lot of discussion around, I know as a board, around acceleration or enrichment, and how many high school courses should middle schoolers be eligible for, what that means for your high school master schedule on the back end. So I'm most excited about that conversation, because now we can talk secondary stuff. We can really talk about curriculum and instruction. For example, the high school is piloting this year Physics First, physics in 9th grade. Well, there's an impact, a long-term impact on what sciences you offer at the middle school, and also what sciences you'll have to offer in the back end at the high school if you're pushing what is traditionally an 11th or sometimes 12th grade science in early as 9th grade.
The math.
Yeah.
That's a big piece.
So it provides an avenue. It almost forces the conversation, because it's a predictable meeting. It's on the calendar, and it's going to happen because we're going to have those key people in the room at the same time.
When do the elementary team and the secondary team talk about transition? Do they have that cross
Oh, that's
conversation?
Not
that's
even transition, but also like what's needed, the
Yeah.
vertical.
vertical and horizontal. Yeah,
We've had that in the past.
those would be some of the discussions where
That's it.
where we would say this is an issue that we've got to bring everyone together. That might be a discussion we have on the second Monday of the month with an implementation team. 5th grade to 6th and 8th grade to 9th grade. So those would be topics that group would explore.
I think the important thing is that everybody's talking. And whether it's the third Monday, the second, do it on a Thursday.
Yeah, that's grade level leaders meetings.
But the point is to keep people, to bring the parties together and have them talk and brainstorm about what's needed and the best, the best practices and ultimately, goals. Where you intending, where do you want to bring it? How do you get them there?
Yeah, and that's really it. These groups talk about what it will look like for us, and without negotiating the finish line or the expectation, there is a lot of breathing room in the 5 schools. That's what I'm excited about the work around the school teams, is they have almost a blank check in writing their path or their directions of how they will get to the same finish line that we've all committed to. It gives people at the school and those school teams some flexibility to use their demographics or uniqueness to help make that happen without mandating it all the way from the top of the organization down to the bottom. And what we know is when you have shared decision making and shared input, people buy in a little bit differently.
Are we still going to have our consultants come in, like Judy Carr?
With the elementary group,
Girl
yeah.
for the Mouth?
Yeah, and she uses a vocabulary that I picked up and Allison and I talk about. She talks, she has this little riddle that you have 3 choices in schools, or really any organization. You have forced choice, you have free choice, and you have guided choice. And if we look at this sort of how we will spend our time and how we'll advise each other and make decisions, forced choice is the Common Core. Common Core is for this is our curriculum. These are our standards. Maybe it's more of standards. The standards are here. They're not going anywhere. You need to prepare kids. The guided choice is you can pick a couple ways of implementing the standards. You could use the math modules. You could use core knowledge with ELA. You could write your own curriculum. You could adopt the curriculum you had, but so you have some wiggle room. The free choice is when the level of decision-making gets down to the school team, the principal, assistant principal, or those teacher leaders have an opportunity to say, how will we get there? And their plan or their path to get there should, and I hope will, look different than other schools, but it's the there or the finish line is sort of a non-negotiable. And I think if we look through this schematic, through what's a forced choice, what's a guided choice, and a free choice, it gives people roles and responsibilities so they know what the authority is. You know, we're not going to argue the Common Core standards anymore, they're here. But where we have an opportunity to discuss is what skills and strategies and resources will we use to make that happen in our classrooms.
Thank you.
I just had a few questions. It seems like implicit in this was sort of an idea we weren't doing this enough in the past. Is that, we're not going to fault anybody in the past, but it seems like there was more of a top-down. And, it's hard to say exactly, but it seems like we need more of this in other places.
I think it was really based on a lot of feedback and input, particularly from administrators, to say, we want to know where we're going and how to get there. And my position is yes, and we need input and how that will happen. I think the only commentary I can make is as we revisit our strategic plan and what the next iteration of the strategic plan will look like. I heard a lot of feedback that the implementation level of the strategic plan didn't get to the classroom level enough. Now the input was there, but in terms of, I think, how some of the tenets of the strategic plan were implemented, there was a lot of interest in that level of participation. So no, I don't think this is a response to something didn't get done, as opposed to how we engage everyone at different levels to make what we talk about as a board real and observable in our schools.
And then I guess this is a structure. It's not, this doesn't have our goals, and it doesn't have exactly how it's going to work. We'll have to see how that plays out. And but I guess the main message I would like to have in there is that we want to make this more of a student-centered process, and that's what I've observed in my 8 years or 7 years on the board. Is that sometimes we don't look at what the student needs are as much as what the teacher needs are, what the structure needs are. So I think we just need to keep that in mind. And keep in mind, these are really, as we all know, these are really challenging times in education with the Common Core and with just a lot of increased student needs that we see. And we really need to have the structures and professional development in place, and what Charles talked about, have all the team members, noting that we have to be on top of these students, particularly those at risk, that we may not notice right away. So I think this should be kind of a change in focus a little bit, perhaps. And I don't know how that's going to work exactly. This is really a skeleton of a plan of how we implement our goals. So it's not exactly, it's hard to comment on.
No, but I think the main thing is that the goal has to be about the kids. I mean,
exactly.
This is the how to get there, but I think to get, the ultimate goal, the destination is the children and what's best for them. So.
And it's a conversation a lot of districts have had around, are we a teaching organization or a learning organization? And it sort of goes back to sort of the customer service model. Who are the customers, kids and parents, and to look at how we implement change or reform through that model is really, really important.
It's tough. I mean, the Common Core was just thrown at everyone, and it has great aspirations, but we really have to figure out using better, different types of teaching, using universal design, using different types of teaching to really help students access this. It's not.
Yeah, and I think that was part of the challenge in year 1 and 2 around the Common Core, is there was such a sea change in what we were teaching, the content, that there was urgency and fear that the actual curriculum was changing, that we weren't as focused on how we were teaching that curriculum to kids and to all kids. I think the good news now is, as we enter really year 3 of the Common Core, we feel comfortable with what kids need to know through the Common Core learning standards, and we can go back to focusing on how to deliver that instruction in meaningful ways for kids.
Okay, well, thank you. We'll take it a step at a time.
The last slide, and you have it, is just sort of a schedule over the next month or so. And we'll get this out. We have our board meeting schedule in draft because a lot of these pieces are moving pieces. But just so you know, and we will certainly get this out, at our next meeting on September 23rd, we have 3 different discussions. One is around feedback and commentary on our 3 through 8 math and ELA assessments, as well as the local assistance plan. Local assistance plan is the state has asked us to delve a little bit deeper into our test scores at Frank G. Lindsay and the high school, because they have statistically noted that our regular ed students are achieving at higher levels than our special education level students. And I'll let Alice quickly comment on that.
Okay, we are not alone in this designation. When we look at the list, it appears to be schools or buildings that have a sizable special ed population. And that doesn't mean that it's not a challenge, and an important challenge, and one we have to meet. A local assistance plan means none of this planning goes to the state. This planning is local. And what it's looking at is very critically looking at every single special education child and how we're meeting their goals and how, we can move them ahead to achieve more success on the assessments. Kids with an IEP have an IEP for a reason, and it's going to be more challenging for them to get to a level 3 or a level 4 on the assessments, but that doesn't mean that there are other strategies we can use. A fortunate piece, or unfortunate for Lynn, whatever, but Lynn Rafalik, who's our new Director of Pupil Personnel Services, was involved in designing a lab plan in Arlington before, so she has experience with this. In our region, Ardsley is with us. There are other districts with us who have schools that were noted for this discrepancy between how the general ed kids did and how the special ed kids did on the tests. And our BOCES is putting together some workshop also to help us, because it's brand new, writing these plans and what to look for in buildings to create the plans, the local assistant plans for classrooms with special education children in our schools.
Is this because we concentrated a group of kids in that project? When we started the ABC program, or is it?
It doesn't have that same magical 30 number that we dealt with earlier. Of course, having a larger population. The tests are so hard at this point, and our general ed population is making slow progress. We made better progress in math than we did in ELA last year, and you'll hear that. It's hugely challenging, but for kids who have another challenge as well, it's hugely challenging. Interestingly, in our high school, in the PPS review, which you'll hear about in 2 weeks, Judy Hirschhorn, who was the consultant who did the review, said that we're too settled in for our high school students achieving the region's credit by getting the 55. If a kid could get a 55 or a 57 or a 58 with a little bit more targeted instruction, we could get them past.
Yeah.
And that's got to be a goal. It's not just the goal of looking at the bottom 20% of the kids or 15%, but the goal of the kids who are just missing, who are passing the regions with a 55, who therefore are graduating for identified kids with IEPs, but getting them past the next hurdle. And the kids with the mid to high 2s who should be getting a 3. That has to be a focus as well.
I agree.
So it's never easy, but
I think,
it's never
Charles,
boring either.
The idea of the lab plan was to get away from cohorts, because I think the state realized there were a lot of students in subgroups performing at a disproportionate level as their peers, but previously the state only calculated subgroups if you had more than 30 in your testing population. And there are bigger schools, there are smaller schools. that never got on the state's radar, but those kids also weren't performing. So the state now looks at the achievement of everyone in every subgroup, and they determine whether or not their growth was proportionate to the growth of other subgroups, particularly students that are regular education. So this is new for us. For our region, BOCES has been tapped as a regional sort of information center on behalf of the state. So they're learning it before they can tell us what it is. But we certainly hope in 2 weeks we'll be able to have a much clearer picture of what it is, how we got there, and what the work will be.
And I think it's a great opportunity for us to use these resources. And it's unfortunate that'll help, and we can perhaps become a leader, because it's not just us. It's only, I think it's 5.9% of students with disabilities achieved proficiency on.
It's so not just us.
And yeah, it's
there's a cynical
right.
piece of me
Mm-hmm.
that's saying, okay, so our general ed kids did better, creating a wider gap, which is not a fair thing to say or even think, but we have to help all kids.
I just think we need to. All districts have to change the way they do instruction. That's why I mentioned universal design, and I think it's a lot of things to do. But it's only I think 30% of high proficiency of general education in the state.
Right, and we were certainly better than that.
But it's a challenge. So I think it's one we can take on.
Yeah. So we'll learn.
Early identification too. The earlier we get them identified, and so they can.
Well, we do a lot of that. We do have a lot of children before they even come in to our kindergartens. We've identified them. We're providing services for them, and then with our kinder camp even, we're doing so much more than a lot of people are doing. Thank goodness, So we're
So also on the 23rd is both Alice and Mary referred to, we'll give you an update on our work to date on the PPS special education audit. That was a presentation that the board heard back on April 9th. So we'll give you an update on what's been accomplished and the work yet to be done. In early October, our transportation consultant that we heard an update from on March 22nd, 2014, will give us an update, and we'll also give some recommendations or things to consider with regards to transportation to save some money, tighten up our routes, so on and so forth. So that will be a very detailed and thorough discussion. Same night, I mentioned Amy Chestnut through BOCES, our communication specialist, will give an update on our communication processes that we put in place and some of our successes from last year, and also some ideas and thoughts for moving forward this year. October 22nd, Matthew Swirloff's going to come and give an update on our energy performance. As he's the energy performance consultant, he's going to give an update on our use of energy, what we've saved, all of those good things, and also a technology update with regards to the capital project. And lastly, in November right now, on the 12th, our elementary academic report, and the 25th, the secondary academic report. So those are some highlights and some things to look forward to. And we'll document this in our board meeting schedule, and we'll get that out there. Thank you.
So that would segue us to board goals. And as indicated, there are essentially three major goals. On down. Improve the college and career readiness and graduation rate of our students. Determine what a successful Henhud graduate looks like, as defined by an including and collaborative definition of college and career readiness. Fiscal responsibility, develop and pass a fiscally responsible and transparent budget that aligns with our mission statement and goals. And third, to improve the perception of the Hendrick Hudson School District by all stakeholders. The reality is pretty much it's in place, these items, to improve the perception. I mean, continue to develop and pass a fiscally responsible and transparent budget. That's an ongoing. We've been doing it, and it's ongoing. I think the main focus that is to be discussed at this point is what college and career readiness looks like. Is some sort of a
what they consider. Actually, found it very interesting to find out that in the United States, only 20% of the states have officially created and adopted specific definitions about college and career readiness. The remaining states have not adopted an official definition, but they've joined the Common Core State Standards Initiative or the College and Career Readiness System, and they've created their own definitions, which generally reflect the major definition that college and career readiness refers to the content, knowledge, skills, and habits that students must possess to be successful in post-secondary education or training that leads to a sustaining career. A student who is ready for college and career can qualify for and succeed in an entry-level credit-bearing college course without the need for remedial or developmental coursework. It also considers children to be proficient in reading a wide range of materials and informative texts, fluent writing in several modes, quantitative literacy through algebra and geometry combined with the ability to understand and interpret data, awareness of social systems, basic proficiency in a second language, basic awareness of other cultures and experiences, and the appreciation of career and expressive arts. Under that, some states have also included science and having a great deal of basic knowledge in science. I think that the main reason that college and career readiness, the term actually came about, was because so many children were entering college and they were not ready for the whole experience. And colleges were having children spend a tremendous amount of time in remedial courses in both math and reading.
And then they were dropping out because it's a statistic.
Well,
the kids that enter college and have to take remedial courses tend to give up because they're spending a lot of time
Right.
in money.
And there were statistics given, said of 100 middle school students, 93 said they wanted to go to college. Of those 93 students, only 70 will graduate from high school. Of the high school graduates, just 44 will actually enroll in the university, and just 26 of those enrolled in college will successfully earn a college degree. And that's not just New York State, that's all across the country. So across the country, it was felt that something had to be done. So it's very discouraging statistics when you think about it, you know. So I think that then became the problem of every single high school and every single school district to say, what can we do starting from the ground level on up? And most of the districts decided to go with the Common Core curriculum. So
I think one thing that's good about saying college and career, in the 60s or the 70s, the American system went to where it was all, you had to go to college, you had to go to university degree and be successful. Before that, there was a pretty successful career education, you know, technical mechanics, a lot of high schools in New York City. They had the aeronautical high school and the automotive high school where you could learn trades. And people got away from that, districts got away from that in the school systems. And so not every kid is going to be ready to go to college, but to be ready to go out into the world and make a living, to be career ready is another thing. And that this opens it up to where we can provide those kind of things for kids too. You know, it's important that we send kids out that are ready either to enter college at the level that they're supposed to be at, or to be able to go out and make a living in the world. It's a big thing. I thought part of this was that over the year, our instructional teams were going to come back and tell us what they thought that was. They were going to develop this definition of what a successful Hindhead graduate is. You know, that was part of the work that they would be doing this year was defining that for us.
It's not something, okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of our collaborative definition.
it is.
No, I understand.
I think it is part of it, but it just for us to understand the basic definition
Mhm.
of what it is. And you're correct, and I'm glad you brought that up, because it isn't just students in college being able to read textbooks and, being able to do mathematics problems successfully, but even children going to a trade school weren't able to even read the manuals or comprehend, some of the mathematical equations that have to be associated with their particular career that they were pursuing. So all of this came about because there were so many people in the, higher organization level of colleges or, trade schools saying these children aren't as ready as they could be. And what can we do?
The only thing I think that, well, maybe not the only thing, but one of the things I think they're missing in that definition is the social emotional piece.
No, there is. That's another
Oh, it
piece
is it?
of it.
Is it in
yes.
there?
That's what I was going to say also, because if you look at the definitions, it's not listed.
I found it amazing, Marion. This is just some of the different states and their actual definitions, which vary from state to state, and that piece I found interesting. And in the definition with Pearson and the definition that I found from the different organizations, they missed that part. That was more of a not just the readiness piece, but part of the solution was to have children become more mature, more capable of being socially able to integrate, with other students and solve problems and all of those different things. It's very interesting when you start to read these definitions.
So are we gonna include that in our definition?
Sorry.
somehow, or are we gonna let the, it's gonna be part of the collaborative definition? Is that the goal?
The collaborative part was
It would.
we could give guidelines, but the collaborative, they're coming back and telling us.
Right.
And how can we incorporate that in our board goals? That's.
But
I missed
our
the-
board goal is for them is for the district to determine what a successful undergraduate looks like. That's our board goal. All these instructional teams should come back and tell us.
Well, I think we have to have an idea
Yeah.
ourselves of what
Right.
college and career ready should be. I mean, there is an adopted type of definition, but I think it's up to all of the different teachers to meet, kindergarten through high school and say, this is what a successful Hendrick Hudson graduate will look like. And yes, it may mean that we take graduates, that have already gone through and bring them back to get their input and say, what do you think made you college and career ready?
What worked,
Exactly, because they're the ones that would know the best, what they were lacking or made them successful once they went to college.
I'd like to hear from the 5% who didn't graduate. What would it have taken for them to graduate? What would it have taken for them to be ready? What kept them from graduating?
Well, I think we have to find them.
Well, I think-
That's the first step. Identify who they are. And then from there.
Barbara mentioned the states that were absent from that list, and one being New York. We had an individual work with our administrative team last Thursday before we opened school. His name's Dick Jones, and he actually is working on behalf of the state on the New York State College and Career Readiness Institute. And he's working with a team of business leaders and educators from across the state to try to define what that looks like for New York State. And he led our administrative team through a series of activities, which really was a self-assessment to say what does college and career readiness look like, and how do we already measure it? And what we realized is we don't measure it. We measure content and application. And our takeaway was there's a whole series of soft skills that need to be measured or expected that are not, that don't find their way into a state assessment score around teamwork, collaboration, public speaking, a lot of those soft skills that we're not measuring in a Regents exam. And he challenged us to think about where by grade level do we teach these skills, or where should we teach these skills, and build backwards to essentially say if at the end of 5th grade students can read, write, do math at grade level, pass the state exam, but also have these authentic ways of demonstrating their knowledge through teamwork, through collaboration, you're getting there. And our planning meeting after our work with the administrators focused on how do we get this message to our teacher leaders. I know we had a conversation about the role of IMC and weighing in on this, because while we're focused, as I just said, focus on new curriculum and how to teach it, we also need to make sure if we're just teaching standards, we're not teaching kids. And somehow we have to find a very meaningful and blatant way to get these soft skills into our curriculum, but they won't be measured by state assessment scores. And that's the bold move that districts make, to say assessment scores are important and they're a piece of our fabric in the world of accountability, but they're not the only thing that are preparing kids.
It's funny because they go on to say there's 16 habits of mind that should be included, and that's persistence, communicating with clarity and precision, managing impulsivity, gathering data through all senses, listening with understanding and empathy, creating, imagining, and innovating, thinking flexibly, responding with wonderment and awe, metacognition, taking responsible risks, finding humor, questioning and problem posing, thinking independently, applying past knowledge to new solutions, remaining open to continuous learning. So also time management, note-taking, self-control, all of those things.
Wow.
It goes on and on.
That's way above my pay scale, I'm telling you.
But they what's got grit in the book How Children Succeed.
No, that's
They talk about grit.
Yeah, that's persistence.
And that's
Well,
what our state tests
we
were
talked about that when we had Dick Jones with us on that Thursday. We talked about where do students demonstrate those skills? They demonstrate those skills in National Honor Society. They demonstrate some of those skills volunteering. They demonstrate those skills as a class officer, so on and so forth. So how do you start to collect that data? Also attendance data. How many students are being receiving discipline reports, so on and so forth, and build a profile of what it may look like to be college and career ready, and what opportunities we already have for kids to demonstrate some of those soft skills that sometimes don't make their way into the classroom.
But even being on a sport, participating in sports.
Extracurricular,
I
sure.
mean, all of that. You look at, how children can collaborate together.
Those are all life skills. They're life skills.
Absolutely.
I'm going to add in too, we also have to be aware of everything that's going on, because today we tend to, when we add in that stuff, and I hope people doing the definition of this realize about like all those sandbox rules are gone. And we have to really start letting kids work things out for themselves, because we've taken that away from them a lot. That's also got to go back in. So when we're doing these definitions, we have to memorize, we have to also realize that parenting comes into this, because I hate to tell you, but if you can't do your laundry, that's a big stress at college.
Yes.
I mean, you have to be able to do these things. So we have to also recognize the parenting part of this too, and hopefully parents will come in of these soft skills that these kids need to, letting kids work things out. And we tend to not let kids do that these days, and we have
But
to start.
it's a lot of. It's not just laundry. It's getting along with the person across
Absolutely,
the
absolutely.
roommate that
And that your
maybe is
mom's not
slob.
going to be there to work
or
things
that,
out for you.
Or
and-
getting up on time.
Getting
and,
up on
all
time,
Those, I mean,
time
because
management
that's,
skills.
But that's something that hopefully your parents have instilled.
What was that word you said? Hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. And parents. That it's something they've imparted along the way, that there has to be a certain amount of discipline and there has to be an expectation, and it's not just going to come in a vacuum, but it's something that, frankly, the sooner you start with that, it's not
It's
something
okay
that
to
you're
fail,
gonna, but it's not something you're going to have in a course, but it's something that it's over time, and it's their learned skills as well. It's
Absolutely.
We also have to be cognizant of the way families have changed over the years. The generation since I graduated high school, families have changed significantly. Divorces, more single-family families, households, blended households, and things like that. Children experience a lot of different things, and the schools have to be aware of some of those things and the value.
Right, but some of those things still have to, no matter what the structure of your family, whether it's blended, divorced, a single parent, a lot of these things still have to be taught to these kids.
Yes, I agree.
Again, just the listening skills, the important than some of the other, you know, than some of the other.
Well, I think what Charles, I think what you're both saying is that with the list that Barbara read of a lot of adults don't have those skills. So I mean, it's a lot to expect of students to be this perfect mix of getting good test scores, you know, being college and career ready. So we have to realize we're taking each student how they come to us and then give them the support that they can. We're taking student where they are, and then we have to get them where they need to be college and career ready. They're going to be perfect? No, they're not going to be perfect, but if they can achieve in a meaningful way, then that's what we have to figure out. You know, I think that's
It's the measurement piece. It's how
Right.
you measure these things, because we have such a super focus on measuring student achievement and growth over time, which is important, but
In math and English.
right, in math and English, and until there's an assessment on teamwork and collaboration and resilience, it's hard to measure that. So these skills in this conversation makes it really difficult to penetrate the classroom level, because that's not what gets in the newspaper.
But that's also something that's got to start at
Sure.
the beginning. I mean, that's you're talking kindergarten, first grade. That's
Sure.
something that's.
Yep.
It's not a class like, you know, in first quarter, 12th grade.
Right.
It's
Citizenship.
exactly.
Right.
Yep.
We can change this. That's
Yeah, I
that's-
just, the last 3 pages, those are really belief statements. Look
Yep.
at the fiscal belief statements, the student achievement.
No, I'll just change. That's easy.
Yeah.
But I think, I wasn't at the retreat, so I think a lot of thought went into the goals, and I think if we make sure it's broad enough, it's a good start, you know, from our vantage point as a board, so.
I think the goal here was just basically to just initiate this conversation and to you know, let people know that this is indeed what we're focusing on at this point.
But I'm very happy to see that the definitions are including more than just the academic piece, you know, that they're looking at the total child, so.
And I think we can share our definition with New York State once we develop it.
Yeah, right, 'cause New York State is just saying it's over 80 in
That's
the
right.
math regions and 75 I'm in English. That's college and career ready in New York State.
Yeah, exactly, so we need to share with them.
So anything else?
I do, I have one more comment. Just on our. goal
Getting my feeling here.
The page where it says student achievement, we believe that our district can, and our last line is to successfully implement the New York State Reform Agenda, et cetera. And this is something the New York State is asking us to do. But I think there's still a lot of debate on whether APPR and Common Core Learning Standards are actually going to improve student achievement.
Right now, it's what we're working with, you know.
Right. So that brings us to.
No, it's important for us to do it.
This notes. That brings us to audience comments. Are there you go.
You've been waiting so patiently. You've learned perseverance and faith. That's good girl.
Every time you guys tell me you have short BOE things, you prove me wrong.
Should have been here last time, right? That was a record last time.
Hi, everyone. My name is Theodora Kratoulis, and I am president of SEPTA and mother of 2 children here, one in the elementary and one at the high school, and they're both at different ends of the spectrum. So I do appreciate at the high school level that you are looking at what a college readiness child looks like, because she is actually going through the process of applying to colleges as we speak, and it's been interesting to watch that process. So.
It's terrible.
It is, it's terrifying, because you can cross all your T's and dot all your I's and hopefully get in where you want to get.
I said terrible, not terrifying.
I'm going to play a little bit of the devil's advocate here, because there was a lot of information thrown on your presentation, and I'm trying to process a lot of the information, and so please forgive me if not everything is clear. The one thing I would like to see is some of that implementation, that when all these team meetings are done on every other Monday or whatever, some of that information is somehow passed on to the parents, that communication is opened up and shown, that how the implementation is going to be done and how effective it is, because I do believe that team-based meetings on a basic level and structured up is effective, because if you don't have if you're not teaching the teachers effectively, they're not going to effectively teach the child. So So I truly believe it's very important in that aspect. But I am concerned because we've had a year, this is the third year, but we had a whole year of the new BOCES program with the core curriculum, the math and the ELA, and the scores came out and we didn't do so well. Actually, we did poorly in the ELA, according to what I looked at the statistics. We were at 60 to 70% of our kids were at a 1 and 2, which I was so surprised at. I've been in this district for 22 years and I never anticipated even to see those kind of numbers coming out of Penn Hud. So as a parent, what I would like to see, and I'm going to pick on you, Mr. Hawkrider, I'm sorry, is not a letter from you saying that, you know, your assessment is out on your child on the parent portal, and, you know, state-wise, everyone did poorly. I understand that, but how are we changing it? What did we do last year that wasn't effective that we're going to change this year? And as a parent, I would like to hear about it. I don't want to hear it in a workshop. I would like to maybe hear, these are the new strategic plans we're planning. The goals are lofty, but I'm looking for more concrete detail as a parent. I'm concerned that we're going to go through a year of looking at math workshops where we didn't look at any of the ELA and we did poorly in the ELA. I would like to see concrete what changes are going to occur from last year to this year as a parent. Again, just effectiveness. Even if it is where you're looking at it saying, well, we're breaking it down to teams and we're seeing them on a weekly basis. How is that team going to effectively bring that instruction to that teacher, into that classroom, and how is it going to effectively affect each child? And especially our children with learning disabilities. Especially when you just told me that across the board we did poorly. If it means changing, there's been shown statistically over, I don't have the name of the people that wrote the articles, that it's been shown that more concretely now that pull-out programs are more effective than push-in programs. So you might look into your co-teach programs being pulled out, or more core of those kids being pulled out instead of pushing in. It's shown that concrete pull-out programs are more effective for kids. It could be done for your readings. I remember we had a lot more pull-out programs when my son started years ago in the building level services than we do now. A lot of it is push-in. I'm not quite sure that all that push-in is effective at this. So you might look at that. And again, I just think when we started, again, I have been here for years. I've done the strategic planning. I've been in so many committees. I don't even know what to look at. But I think what I need as a parent, and we've said it over and over in PTA committees, is and communication to the parents and being concrete about what we need or how you're going to change it effectively, and that's what I'm looking for. Effective changes and how they're going to apply to my child. And as lovely as your goals are, and I love them, I really think they're great, and I really love how, which was missing, these weekly meetings and looking at building up, I see that's going to take a long period of time to become more implemented, and I see it benefiting my youngest one in the years to come. But now I'm looking at as a parent saying, well, I just got my daughter's ELA grade. How is my daughter going to be taught this year effectively for ELA?
What will be different?
What would be different?
So on the 23rd, we're going to give an overview of our 3 through 8 math and ELA scores, and we will exactly have that conversation.
Okay.
What can kids and families expect to be different this year? I agree with you. I think the urgency and maybe some of the alarm last year around the new math standards sort of took everyone's focus.
Yeah.
We did a lot of hands-on staff development with our teachers. We did the parent workshops. We had high levels of concentration around math. And I don't want to steal the thunder from the meeting on the 23rd, but what we realized, or what we thought was, we've always taught kids how to read and write. Math is the big deal. This year, and then I'll sort of make you come back on the 23rd.
Oh, I'll be here.
This year, all 3 elementary schools in 6th grade committed to the same literacy assessment across the board. That's very, very important because in the past, our 3 elementary schools were using 3 different methods of assessing reading and writing, and three different methods of how to support students that are struggling or below grade level. So we had no way of saying on October 1st, where are we? Because Furnace Woods was using Model A, Frank G, Model B, and BV, maybe not a model, and I'm sort of making that up. But what we knew we had to do was through a uniform approach, say we need this data on kids at this particular time, and all of the teachers in the grade level, regardless of where they work, need to be working toward the same level of proficiency. So you'll hear that, and you'll hear some other changes in how we're addressing from a 30,000-foot perspective.
I appreciate that. And my last comment, and I think I'm going to piggyback on one of the board members, is our high-risk kids. One of the things that you might be looking at when you're doing these team-based meetings is bringing in the counselors, especially in the middle school. I find that the counselors in this district work extremely well when there's a crisis mode or when the child is in need, and they come in and they help and they come with the family. But I wanted to see more of a preventive measure. If we can see as a team base how maybe we could tag these kids and say they're not in crisis, but they're in high risk. Something's wrong. Thank you. Proactively, and this way we don't get into the high school and there's a greater issues. I find that there's not enough proactiveness, and I spoke to a couple of parents. For some reason, this conversation came up, and a lot of it seems to stem in the middle school, that there's not a lot of proactiveness. And I think if the team-based meetings occur, I think the counselors, the guidance counselors, have to come into these team-based meetings and see on a team base with the teachers, how are they going to work as a team to make sure they're tagging children that might be at risk.
That must have changed then, because they used to do that. When my girls went to school, that was
They might
that was
still do
part of
it.
the whole
Again,
thing.
I think that a question might rise then is it as effective as it should be?
You just want to make sure they're part of the conversation.
And
when
that
this all
should
happens.
definitely be happening.
And that's why you also need the protocols, because it's not just enough to just talk. You have to have set plans and set signs. It's not just, it shouldn't be just left to discretion.
You're looking at statistically now, coming back from a SEPTA point of view, a majority of your children who enter your high school who are classified are usually classified under an emotional disturbance. And usually a child of an emotional disturbance either has a crisis occurring or has had issues along the way that have been occurring on a constant basis. So we're not walking in a high school saying this child has a learning disability. We're in a society that we're able to identify learning disabilities at an earlier age. So when we're looking at children who come into the high school that they're being classified, we're looking more of an emotional disturbances under the Disability Acts. And what I'm looking at seeing is that whole gamut of running. If we're able to tag these children, if we're able to keep an eye on them, if we're able to give them risk factors and give them the building level services, then you might not have the high risk children that don't succeed and fail. And why is that 5% population not graduating? It's just I'm trying to bring it back further in and not look at it. It's a high school. It's a middle school. It might even be a 3rd and 4th grade issue. But it's being able to tag that child from an early age and keeping it, whether it's on a building level social where they talk to a social worker or to a therapist once a week, or just keeping it in emotion. I know teachers have an ability to sit, they have those weekly meetings where they're looking at children and saying, my Tommy is having difficulty in math. Is it only math? Is it in social studies? Is it across the board? So these are the open dialogues that have to be in the team-based meetings that are occurring, and I'm hoping that it becomes more effective.
I think this speaks to the college and career readiness that we spoke of, that it's got to start at the beginning, and it's got to be, it's got to follow through, because, again, for something, ED and stuff like that, a lot of times you may start seeing some of that, and, whether, and, if it starts that early or something. But I mean, if you're watching,
It does. It tends to start very early. I mean, I know from when I was a teacher, it would start at the elementary. You would say sometimes, you have a child that's so successful in the classroom, and the minute they go out for gym or for music class, you know, they fall apart, or out on the playground. And, you know, you start having meetings and say, what's happening there?
Well, and that's what I'm hoping. We had a discussion once about how are we going to move them through the tiers, and how long do they stay in one tier versus going to the second, versus when we have to finally say, are we going to classify our child? And
Those were
that's
the-
something that has to be.
Those were the notes I was writing, and I'm underlining progress monitoring.
Mhm.
What we're talking about here is sort of, how do we know when students aren't learning? What aren't they learning? And how do we know when we need to ratchet up the next level of interventions? And going back to my literacy conversation about finally using the same data and the same assessment to identify where are we, the idea behind progress monitoring is then to have a team of staff sit down and say, here's what each of these students need in literacy or math, and also on the behavioral end, which is exactly what you're talking about. It's RTI, response to intervention, but on behaviors or what we're noticing through observation, so on and so forth. Absolutely. Interventions, progress monitoring, and as Mary mentioned, the protocols to make sure that those conversations are happening and they're standardized.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else? That concludes our meeting. Thank you very much.
Do we have to approve, are we going to vote on our goals?
We can vote on them.
Motion to approve?
Oh, new
Can we
business.
just change that 1/3 line, instead of improve our perception, add continue? Because we
Continue to improve.
continue to improve, because
That's
that might
fine.
bring it down. We're good.
Okay. With that modification, can I get a?
Second.
Let me finish.
Second.
I continue to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I will make those changes, and Roseanne, I will send that to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Along with the comments that you had about belief statements and
Yeah,
such.
the last 3 pages are really
I'll
government belief
change.
statements, achievement belief statement, physical
Right.
belief statement.
Okay, so that brings us, our next meeting is
Wait,
Tuesday.
new comments, or
Board comments.
new business or board comments?
Buy you a watch for Christmas. Go ahead.
Could Claire come in, or could we go, I heard a lot of comments about the new dietary guidelines in the high school and how the lunches aren't that
Good?
pleasant.
We're
and-
being thrown out?
Yeah, yeah. Because, and I heard it from teachers too. that
So
they-
you want to bring Claire in and ask her about food
No, no, it's around the dietary guidelines. One of the reasons we have to follow it, well, my son complained about it because he can only buy 1 entree. And he likes to eat 2. Or he likes to buy one for somebody else and you can only buy 1. So for some kids, it's not enough. You know, so. Yeah, and so he's either gonna have to bring a sandwich or go get something. It's, you know. It's an issue, and the things that you can have anymore, apparently aren't as tasty as they used to be. It's not that Claire and her staff can't cook well anymore, it's that the dietary guidelines
What she has to cover. Are limited.
are limiting. And so, what is, we have to follow those guidelines because we get subsidies? Is that the correct?
Right. It's a federal, I think it's a program.
Well, I think if maybe if
State
we, I
and
don't
federal.
necessarily think you need to bring Claire here, but
No,
if we can
Claire
ask her to maybe just send us the information, we can talk about it. There you go. In an appropriate amount.
I think she had noted it was mandatory, there wasn't a lot of leeway, but we'll have to have her.
Apparently,
we could-
last year it was difficult, but this year it's even
More difficult,
more, and
right.
2 or 3 people, and, you know, particularly the part about not being able to buy 2 entrees, that's, you can't even buy 2 pieces of pizza.
I know, you have big boys in this school.
My son
Carson's
eats-
what, 6'6", needs to eat more than 1 slice of pizza?
Yes, it's a lot more than that.
Eats pie, my son eats pie.
So we can ask Claire to send us that information, and basically it can be a, you know, perhaps new business next, when we do receive it.
Right.
And we can address it.
And then the other thing is just a moment of silence for 9/11 tomorrow.
Absolutely.
get
continue
past
to
it.
No, it
remind
keeps our
people.
discussion
Yep.
today in perspective when you think.
Absolutely. Our next meeting will be 2 weeks from yesterday. It will be a Tuesday, September 23rd, because of the holidays at the end of the